On a quiet Sunday afternoon in 1991, a 3-year-old boy vanished in plain sight, surrounded by adults, parents, and children, with no witnesses and no answers. His name was Michael Wayne Dunahee, and his disappearance became one of the most disturbing mysteries in Canadian history. In this documentary on Hidden Truth, we uncover how a simple family outing turned into a decades-long search filled with hope, mistakes, unanswered tips, and haunting silence. We will follow the exact timeline of that day, the massive investigation, the sightings that raised false hope, and the questions that still remain today. This is not just a story about the past, it is a mystery that may still be solved. Watch carefully until the end, and subscribe to Hidden Truth, and press the bell icon, because every detail you hear could matter more than you think. That morning began with no fear, no warning, and no sign that a city was about to lose its sense of safety forever. Victoria, British Columbia was calm, familiar, and trusting on March 24, 1991, the kind of day where parents felt comfortable letting their children walk a few steps ahead without worry. Michael Wayne Dunahee was only 3 years old, curious and energetic, unaware that his name would soon be spoken across the country for decades to come. His family had no reason to be afraid, no reason to suspect danger, and no reason to believe that a playground near a school could become the center of one of Canada's most painful mysteries. As you listen to what happened next, remember that every second mattered, every decision carried weight, and the smallest moment would soon change thousands of lives forever. Stay with this chapter, because what begins as ordinary will quickly turn into something deeply unsettling. Michael Wayne Dunahee lived with his parents Crystal Dunahee and Bruce Dunahee in Victoria, British Columbia, where life felt safe and predictable. On Sunday, March 24, 1991, the family went together to Blanchard Elementary School so Crystal could take part in a women's flag football practice. Bruce attended as a spectator, standing near the field, watching calmly, while Michael stayed close by. The school grounds were open and public, with families nearby and children playing, creating a sense of security that no one questioned. When they arrived at around 12:30 in the afternoon, Michael asked his mother if he could go to the playground located only a short distance from the football field. Crystal later explained that she felt an uneasy instinct, a quiet feeling that something was not right, but she allowed him to go, reminding him clearly that he must stay there and wait for his father to come. Michael walked toward the playground wearing a blue hooded jacket, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shirt, rugby pants, and blue sneakers. He was small, visible, and close, and there was no reason to believe he was in danger. Minutes passed as the practice continued, and nothing seemed unusual. The area was active but not chaotic, and no one reported seeing anything suspicious. When Bruce walked toward the playground to check on his son, Michael was not there. At first, there was confusion rather than panic, as parents often assume a child has wandered a short distance away. That confusion turned into fear almost immediately when Michael could not be found anywhere nearby. Around 50 people began searching the school grounds, calling his name, checking behind equipment, bushes, and pathways. Crystal and Bruce quickly realized that something was terribly wrong, and they contacted police without delay. Officers arrived and began assessing the situation, and within a very short time they reached a chilling conclusion. This was not a case of a child wandering off. Michael had vanished too quickly, too completely, and too silently. The disappearance shocked officers because there were no witnesses, no screams, no signs of a struggle, and no confirmed sightings of Michael leaving the area. The playground was close enough to the field that his parents should have noticed him returning, yet he never did. Investigators understood immediately that if Michael had been taken, it had happened in minutes, possibly seconds, by someone who knew how to move without drawing attention. This realization transformed the case from a missing child investigation into a suspected abduction. Every detective from the Victoria Police Department was called in, and the search expanded rapidly across the city and beyond. What disturbed investigators most was not just that Michael was gone, but that no one could explain how it happened. As the hours passed, panic spread through the community. Parents rushed to hold their children closer. Neighbors joined search efforts, and the city began to feel a fear it had not known before. A child had disappeared in broad daylight, in a public place, with people nearby, and no one had seen anything. That fact alone made the case terrifying, because it suggested that this could happen anywhere, to anyone, at any time. For Crystal and Bruce Dunahee, time seemed to stop, frozen at the moment they realized their son was missing. For Victoria, that day marked the beginning of a loss of innocence that would never fully heal. As night fell on March 24, 1991, one question echoed through every home and every police briefing. How could a 3-year-old vanish without a trace in the middle of the day? The lack of witnesses did not bring comfort, it brought dread, because it suggested planning, opportunity, and intent. Investigators would soon face thousands of tips, false leads, and painful dead ends, while Michael's family waited for answers that never came. Was someone watching the playground that day, waiting for the perfect moment, or was this an impulsive act that no one noticed? Could someone nearby have seen something but never realized its importance? As you move into the next chapter, keep this question in mind, because the investigation that followed would become one of the largest in Canadian history, yet still leave the most important question unanswered. Where is Michael Wayne Dunahee? By the time the sun set on Victoria that evening, fear had replaced routine, and urgency had replaced hope, because authorities now understood that every passing minute reduced the chances of bringing Michael home safely. Police officers moved quickly, sealing off areas, questioning witnesses, and expanding the search far beyond the school grounds. This was no longer a local concern, it was a crisis that demanded immediate and massive action. Helicopters scanned from above, officers searched on foot, and volunteers flooded the area with flashlights and determination. What made this moment so terrifying was not just that a child was missing, but that he had disappeared in a way that defied logic and visibility. Stay with this chapter, because this is where the investigation grows, the pressure builds, and the reality sets in that even the largest search effort may not be enough to uncover the truth behind Michael Wayne Dunahee's disappearance. Within hours of Michael's disappearance, the Victoria Police Department mobilized every available resource. Officers were pulled from all units, and the case was immediately classified as a suspected abduction rather than a missing child who wandered away. This decision was based on how quickly Michael vanished and the complete absence of sightings or physical evidence. Search teams combed nearby streets, parks, wooded areas, and waterways, while roadblocks were set up to question drivers leaving the area. Hundreds of volunteers joined law enforcement, forming search lines that stretched across neighborhoods, fields, and school grounds. The atmosphere was tense and emotional, with parents holding their children close as they walked side by side with officers, all hoping to be the one who found Michael safe. Despite the massive effort, the search produced no clothing, no footprints, and no physical clues that could explain where Michael had gone. As the investigation expanded, tips began pouring in from across Canada and the United States. At the time, police were forced to process this information manually, writing each tip on paper and sorting them by hand, which slowed progress and increased the risk of missed connections. Investigators later admitted that if modern technology such as digital databases, surveillance cameras, and advanced forensic techniques had been available, the outcome might have been different. Detectives interviewed everyone who had been near Blanchard Elementary School that day, including parents, players, spectators, and nearby residents. Known sex offenders living in the region were questioned, and their movements were examined, but no direct link to Michael could be established. The lack of evidence frustrated investigators because it left them chasing possibilities instead of facts. One detail stood out among the thousands of tips. A witness reported seeing a man in his late 40s or early 50s near the playground around the time Michael disappeared, and the man was associated with a brown van. This vague description became one of the few leads investigators could pursue. A month after Michael vanished, Police staged a public reenactment of the disappearance at Blanchard Elementary School using a similar brown van, hoping it would trigger memories or encourage witnesses to come forward. The reenactment drew attention and renewed media coverage, but it failed to produce any solid new information. The man in the van were never conclusively identified, leaving investigators with another unanswered question and no clear suspect. As weeks turned into months, the case became one of the largest and most expensive investigations in Canadian history. A reward of 100,000 Canadian dollars was offered for information leading to Michael's recovery, but even this incentive failed to break the silence. The community remained engaged, placing posters in windows, organizing searches, and refusing to let Michael's face fade from public memory. For Crystal and Bruce Dunahee, every phone call brought hope and fear in equal measure. As they waited for news that never came, they cooperated fully with investigators, reliving the worst day of their lives repeatedly in the hope that one detail might unlock the mystery. Despite the scale of the investigation, the truth remained hidden, just beyond reach. The absence of evidence began to shape a disturbing narrative. Investigators believed Michael had been taken deliberately, possibly by someone familiar with the area and comfortable operating in public spaces without drawing attention. The idea that a predator could move so easily and leave no trace unsettled both police and the public. Schools reviewed safety policies, parents changed routines, and Victoria became more cautious, more guarded, and less trusting. Michael's disappearance had altered the city's sense of security permanently. Yet even with heightened awareness and continued effort, the investigation stalled, trapped by the same question it began with: how could a child disappear so completely? As the investigation stretched into its second year, frustration replaced urgency, and hope began to clash with reality. Thousands of tips had been checked, hundreds of interviews conducted, and countless hours spent searching for answers that refused to appear. The brown van lead faded, the search areas expanded with no results, and investigators were forced to consider that the truth might never be uncovered. Could someone have taken Michael and blended back into ordinary life without suspicion? Did a crucial witness see something but never realize its importance? Was there evidence overlooked in the early chaos that could still change everything? As you move into the next chapter, the story shifts from immediate action to long-term uncertainty, where sightings, confessions, and false leads would offer moments of hope, only to deepen the mystery surrounding Michael Wayne Dunahee even further. Years after Michael Wayne Dunahee vanished, hope returned in fragile waves, not because answers were found, but because people believed they might be close. This chapter matters because it reveals how unresolved cases evolve over time, how desperation can feel like progress, and how belief can briefly replace evidence. When a mystery refuses to rest, every rumor gains weight, every resemblance feels meaningful, and every report becomes a possible doorway to truth. Families cling to these moments because silence is worse than disappointment. Investigators follow them because ignoring any possibility feels irresponsible. Stay with this chapter because it shows how time can both help and harm a search, and how each new lead can reopen wounds while keeping hope alive. What follows is a pattern of anticipation, investigation, and heartbreak that would repeat again and again, stretching the case across decades while keeping Michael's name firmly in the public consciousness. As the years passed without answers, reports of possible sightings began to emerge, each one bringing renewed attention and emotional intensity to the case. In 2006, investigators received information about a young man living in the interior of British Columbia, who physically resembled Michael and had reportedly been living there since the early 1990s. The resemblance was strong enough to prompt serious consideration, and the possibility that Michael could be alive reignited national interest. For Crystal and Bruce Dunahee, this was not just a lead, it was a lifeline, the idea that their son might have grown up somewhere, unaware of who he truly was. Police acted carefully, collecting DNA samples and conducting thorough comparisons. When the results came back, the conclusion was devastating. The man was not Michael. Hope collapsed under the weight of scientific certainty, leaving the family once again with nothing but questions. In 2009, another disturbing development surfaced far from Canada. Police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin discovered a missing person poster of Michael Dunahee in the home of a man named Vernon Sightings. Sightings had reportedly confessed to his psychiatrist that he had murdered a child in 1959 when he himself was 12 years old and claimed knowledge of another child killing. The discovery sent shockwaves through investigators and the public alike. The idea that someone with a violent past had kept Michael's poster raised fears that the case might be connected to something far darker. Authorities investigated thoroughly, but before any meaningful progress could be made, Sightings was found dead, apparently from natural causes. With his death, any potential answers he might have held vanished as well, leaving behind suspicion without resolution. As the 20th anniversary of Michael's disappearance approached in 2011, another possible sighting drew attention. Police were notified about a man living in Chase, British Columbia, whose appearance bore similarities to age-progressed images of Michael. Again, investigators followed protocol, conducting DNA testing to confirm or deny the connection. Once again, the result was negative. Each false lead brought renewed pain to Michael's family, who had learned to balance hope with emotional self-protection. For the public, these repeated developments reinforced the idea that the case was alive, but also painfully stagnant. In 2013, an unusual online development captured attention. A user with the name 𝐏𝐚𝐥𝐤𝐞𝐝 posted on message boards connected to a professional hockey team, claiming that police were coming to collect DNA for testing. Investigators confirmed they had requested a blood sample from a man living in Surrey, British Columbia, whom they believed could possibly be Michael. The story spread quickly, fueled by speculation and anticipation. Days later, the Victoria Police Department publicly confirmed that DNA testing had ruled out the Surrey man as Michael. Once again, the cycle repeated. Hope rose, attention focused, and then reality shut the door. Even decades later, the case continued to attract attention through modern platforms. In 2020, a social media user claimed to have discovered a rare Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt submerged underwater, similar to the one Michael was wearing when he disappeared. The post spread rapidly, and for a brief moment people wondered if a physical trace had finally surfaced. Michael's family reviewed the shirt and confirmed it was not the same one. Another moment of anticipation ended quietly, reinforcing how easily speculation could spiral in the absence of answers. Through every false lead and public claim, investigators remained cautious and methodical. Each report was investigated, each possibility tested, and each conclusion reached through evidence rather than emotion. For Michael's family, the process was exhausting, reopening grief with every development while never providing closure. For the public, these moments revealed how unresolved cases become collective obsessions, shaped by hope, curiosity, and the human need for resolution. By this stage, the mystery had transformed from an urgent search into a long endurance test, where time itself became an enemy. Each sighting raised the same haunting questions. Could Michael have survived? Could he have grown up unaware of his past? And could the truth still be hiding in plain sight? The repeated disappointments did not weaken the case, they deepened it, turning absence into a permanent presence. As you move into the next chapter, the focus shifts from individuals and sightings to the lasting impact on a family and a city, and to how one disappearance reshaped policies, awareness, and lives forever. The question is no longer only where Michael is, but what his absence has done to everyone left behind. By the time years turned into decades, Michael Wayne Dunahee was no longer just a missing child. He had become a symbol of absence, fear, and unresolved pain for an entire community. This chapter matters because it shows what happens after the searches end and the headlines fade, when families are left to live inside questions that never receive answers. It is here that the true weight of disappearance is felt, not in police files or news reports, but in everyday moments that never come back. Stay with this chapter because it reveals how one vanished child reshaped a city's sense of safety, transformed a mother into an advocate, and ensured that Michael's name would never disappear even if the truth remained hidden. What you are about to hear is not about investigation, it is about impact, and the damage left behind when a childhood is stolen without explanation. For Crystal Dunahee, life after March 24, 1991 became divided into two parts, before Michael disappeared and everything that followed. Every birthday that passed without him, every holiday with an empty space, and every ordinary day became a reminder of what was missing. Unlike cases that eventually provide closure through answers or accountability, Michael's disappearance offered none. Crystal lived with constant uncertainty, not knowing whether her son was alive or dead, whether he was suffering or safe, or whether he remembered her at all. This kind of uncertainty created a unique and lasting pain, one that never fully healed because there was nothing to heal around. Instead of withdrawing from public life, Crystal chose a different path, transforming grief into action in a way that would shape child safety efforts across British Columbia. Crystal became a strong advocate for missing children, eventually serving as the president of Child Find British Columbia. Through this work, she used her personal tragedy to raise awareness, support other families, and push for systemic change. She spoke publicly about Michael, not as a victim, but as a real child whose life mattered and whose absence demanded attention. Her advocacy was not driven by anger, but by the belief that other families should not experience the same helplessness she had faced. One of her most significant efforts focused on the introduction of an emergency alert system for abducted children. Crystal openly stated that if such a system had existed in 1991, Michael might have been found. Her voice joined those calling on the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to implement this system, and years later, emergency child alert programs were introduced across most regions of Canada. The impact of Michael's disappearance extended far beyond his family. For residents of Victoria, that day marked what many described as a loss of innocence. Parents who once felt comfortable allowing children to play freely became more cautious. Schools reviewed supervision policies, playground routines changed, and conversations about stranger danger became more frequent and more serious. Michael's case forced the community to confront a frightening reality, that even familiar and seemingly safe environments could hide unimaginable risks. This shift in awareness altered how families interacted with public spaces, replacing trust with vigilance. Michael's sister Caitlin, who grew up in the shadow of his disappearance, became an important part of keeping his memory alive. As an adult, she helped organize the annual Michael Dunahee Keep the Hope Alive Fund Run, a charity event held in the community of Esquimalt. The event raised money for Child Find British Columbia, while also serving as a reminder that Michael had not been forgotten. Each year, participants ran not just for a missing child, but for the idea that hope should not fade simply because time has passed. The event became a quiet act of resistance against forgetting, ensuring that Michael's name continued to be spoken. For law enforcement, the case remained open, even as active investigations slowed. Detectives who had worked on the file described it as one that never truly left them, because the lack of resolution lingered in their careers and personal memories. New officers were briefed on the case, age-progressed images were created, and the file was reviewed repeatedly in the hope that new technology or fresh perspectives might reveal something overlooked. In 2021, police released an age-enhanced sketch of Michael and launched an online tip portal, acknowledging that time could work both against and in favor of solving the case. Memories fade, but people also change, and someone who stayed silent for decades might one day speak. The emotional toll of the case remained heavy. Every reported sighting, every rumor, and every online discussion reopened old wounds for the Dunahee family and reignited public curiosity. Yet despite the pain, Michael's story continued to serve a purpose. It reminded people why child safety measures mattered, why rapid response systems were necessary, and why unresolved cases deserved continued attention. Michael became more than a missing boy, he became a reason for change. As the years passed, one truth became impossible to ignore. Michael's disappearance did not end on the day he vanished. It continued to shape lives long after. The absence became permanent, But so did the determination to remember. The city learned to live with the unanswered question, and the family learned to live without closure. Could someone still be holding a piece of the truth, waiting for the right moment to come forward? Could one memory, one confession, or one overlooked detail still bring answers after all this time? As you move into the final chapter, the focus shifts to where the case stands today, and to the quiet possibility that even after decades, the story of Michael Wayne Dunahee may not be finished yet. More than 3 decades have passed since Michael Wayne Dunahee disappeared, yet his case refuses to fade into history. This chapter matters because it brings us to the present moment, where time has changed technology, society, and people, but not the central question. The silence surrounding Michael's fate has grown heavier with age, but so has the possibility that someone, somewhere, still holds the truth. Cold cases do not end when years pass, they end when answers surface. Stay with this chapter because it explores how hope survives without evidence, how investigators adapt to time, and why even now the disappearance of a 3-year-old boy continues to matter. What you are about to hear is not a conclusion, it is a reflection on what remains unfinished, and why this story still demands attention today. As of the present day, the disappearance of Michael Wayne Dunahee remains an open and active case with the Victoria Police Department. Investigators have stated clearly that the passage of time does not mean the investigation has stopped, only that its methods have evolved. Over the years, the case file has been reviewed repeatedly, with detectives examining early decisions, witness statements, and tips through the lens of modern investigative understanding. Advances in forensic science, digital record keeping, and public communication have given police tools that did not exist in 1991. While physical evidence was never recovered, the possibility remains that information exists in the memories of individuals who were present that day, or who learned something afterward and chose to remain silent. In 2021, police released an age-enhanced image of Michael Wayne Dunahee, showing what he might look like as an adult. This release was not symbolic, it was strategic. Investigators believe that showing Michael as he might appear today could trigger recognition, whether from Michael himself or from someone who knew him under a different name. Alongside this image, an online tip portal was launched, allowing members of the public to submit information directly and discreetly. Officers acknowledged that more than 10,000 tips had already been received since the case began, but they emphasized that one new detail could still be enough to change everything. Time, they explained, can loosen tongues, shift loyalties, and create moments where truth finally feels safer than silence. In 2025, the Victoria Police Department issued another public appeal, reminding the public that Michael's case was still unresolved and urging anyone with information to come forward. The message was simple and direct. All it could take is one person to bring Michael home. This appeal reflected a belief shared by investigators and the family alike, that the truth has not disappeared, only remained hidden. Police have consistently stated that they believe someone knows what happened, whether directly or indirectly. This belief has sustained the case through decades of uncertainty and has prevented it from being closed or forgotten. For Michael's family, the present offers no closure, but it does offer purpose. Crystal Dunahee has continued to speak about her son and about the importance of remembering missing children. She has emphasized that Michael is not just a case number or a story from the past, but a person whose life mattered and whose absence still matters. The family has lived with unanswered questions for so long that certainty has become less important than truth. Whether Michael is alive or not, knowing what happened would bring an end to the uncertainty that has defined their lives for more than 30 years. Public interest in the case remains strong, driven in part by documentaries, online discussions, and renewed awareness of cold cases. Michael's disappearance is often cited as one of the most baffling cases in Canadian history, not because of what is known, but because of what is not. There was no ransom demand, no confirmed suspect, no recovered evidence, and no clear motive. This absence of narrative challenges the human need for explanation and makes the case difficult to accept. Yet it is precisely this lack of resolution that keeps people searching, questioning, and remembering. The question of what happened to Michael Wayne Dunahee remains open. Did someone take him in a moment of opportunity and disappear forever? Did someone nearby see something that only gained meaning years later? Is there a detail buried in memory that has never been shared? These questions continue to echo because they have never been answered. The case stands as a reminder that some mysteries endure not because they are unsolvable, but because the final piece has not yet been revealed. As this chapter closes, the story of Michael Wayne Dunahee does not end. It waits. It waits for a memory to resurface, for a conscience to speak, or for a truth long hidden to finally emerge. This case reminds us that time does not erase responsibility, and silence does not erase truth. Somewhere, the answer exists, and when it is finally spoken, decades of uncertainty could collapse into a single moment of clarity. Until that day arrives, Michael remains missing, but not forgotten. As you reach the end of this documentary, ask yourself what you would do if you held a piece of the truth. Would you stay silent, or would you finally speak? The next chapter of this story depends on that choice, and the world is still waiting for Michael Wayne Dunahee to be brought home. The story of Michael Wayne Dunahee stands as one of the most documented and carefully examined disappearances in Canadian history, grounded in verified reporting, official police statements, and years of public record that confirm every fact you have heard. This case has been chronicled by the Victoria Police Department through public appeals and investigative updates, by national broadcasters including the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, by newspapers such as the Vancouver Sun, and by long-standing missing person resources like the DOE Network and the official Michael Dunahee family website. These sources confirm the date of disappearance on March 24, 1991, the location at Blanchard Elementary School in Victoria, British Columbia. The absence of witnesses, the scale of the investigation, the thousands of tips received, the repeated DNA testing of possible matches, the age-enhanced images released in 2021, and the renewed public appeal issued in 2025 stating that one person could still bring Michael home. This story is real, documented, and unresolved, supported by records from the Victoria Police Department, reports from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation dated March 24, 2006, and March 23, 2011, coverage from the Vancouver Sun marking major anniversaries of the case, material from the DOE Network case, File 148 Delta Mike, British Columbia, and information published by Child Find British Columbia and the Michael Dunahee Keep the Hope Alive Fund Run organized by his family. Now the responsibility shifts from investigators and journalists to everyone listening. If this documentary moved you, disturbed you, or made you question what you think you know, then stay connected to stories that refuse to be forgotten. Subscribe to Hidden Truth, press the bell icon, share this video with others who believe truth matters, and comment below with your thoughts. Because awareness keeps cases alive and silence only protects unanswered mysteries. On Hidden Truth, we do not chase rumors. We preserve facts, we honor victims, and we keep the light on where darkness still hides answers. Michael Wayne Dunahee is still missing, but his story is still being told, and with your support, it will not disappear.